afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Ty, Metalhead Weatherman. I hope you guys are doing well. So, I don't know if you know or if you saw my post by chance, but we have a new elephant in the room, and that is our slight risk that we have issued for Wednesday. Not to mention our day 3 marginal risk for Thursday. We're going to go over all three of these areas, starting with tonight's weather threat, and we'll watch things escalate as time goes on. So, looking at the hazard map, there is no watches or warnings issued across this region. I'm really not expecting business to pick up across this region until later this evening and really into the overnight hours. Over towards this region, of course, we're going to be looking more towards tomorrow afternoon, and then the same can be said for this region on Thursday. So we'll start out by taking a look at our marginal risk. Nothing's really changed with this area. We still have the 2% tornado threat and the 5% wind threat. Hail threat isn't really there for tonight. But again, it's mainly going to be the overnight hours that I'm expecting some of the worst weather to come in. We do have quite a warm sector out in this region and in the region for, or the region of interest for tomorrow. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those really quick once we go through day 2 and 3 here. We get to day 2, and this is where business really picks up. Pretty much from Houston all the way to Mobile, from west to east, there's a chance of severe storms. We can even include Birmingham in that marginal risk now as well. We can even look at areas like Evansville, is that Indiana or is that Illinois? Looks like it could be Evansville, Kentucky. I'm trying to make sure I got it right. But pretty much as far north as maybe even Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, you could see a possibly severe storm. But the main area focuses basically from a line as far north as Memphis all the way down towards New Orleans, and even parts of the Gulf Coast are involved in that slight risk as well. In that slight risk, we have a 5% risk of tornadoes in that area, 15% with risk of wind, and we do have a 5% hail threat there. On day 3, that severe threat worked its way to the east. Mobile's still in there, but that's going to be more so earlier in the day. This area also stretches as far north as Columbus, Georgia. We can look at the Florida Panhandle being involved here. Tallahassee, Panama City are in there as well. And it stretches almost into parts of the peninsula, but we're still going to be just barely on the fringe there. But the main threat with this will most likely be the same as tonight, mainly a isolated damaging wind gust tornado threat for Thursday. And then I'm also keeping an eye on this area right here. Could be a cold core setup. I'm kind of leaning more so towards no, but with the way the warm air is affected with the system as based off tomorrow, can't rule it out. We'll see what the dynamics look like there. If I pick up on anything overnight tonight, I might bring it up in tomorrow morning's video. But let's go ahead and actually jump into things here. We're not going to really go over too many of the parameters as far as Texas is concerned here. We're going to start out just simply looking at the temperature. We know the dew points are going to be pretty impressive around here. And the thing is, this cold front's going to take its sweet time going through here, so there's going to be an increased window of severe storms. I'm really thinking that I'd say about between midnight and probably 3 o'clock is when the storms will be at their strongest, maybe. And then as the front passes through, conditions are going to stabilize pretty quickly. I'm really leaning towards it mainly being damaging winds. We're going to go ahead and actually take a look at the moist sector here. It's a pretty impressive one, by the way. And it holds tight pretty well throughout the overnight hours here. Here's 06Z, so that's about, I would say, midnight, 1 o'clock. Right across this region is where I think the greatest probability of severe exists. And then, of course, we'll watch this transition its way to the east. And look at how it really starts to pick up as we head into the morning hours of Wednesday. So that's going to be a really interesting sector to be watching throughout the course of the day, especially seeing those dew points in the upper 60s, closing in on 70 even. So now that we've looked at that, let's go back to the composite reflectivity, which is what I was looking at earlier before I started the video. I'm mainly here to try and get an idea of what the storm mode is going to be. And like I said, really it's not until the overnight where we start to see the more impressive storms start to develop. Here we are at midnight. This is a decent looking storm right here. There is a chance for marginal severe. There is a decent low level helicity here as well. But the air temperature is kind of working against the dew point a little bit. We're seeing a dew point is fit, but the dew points are pretty impressive, so we may be able to overcome things a bit. Cape's pretty low though too, so yeah. It's a lot working against it, right? This setup for tonight. Just not everything is really in place for a proper severe outbreak. But over towards this sector right here, that's a little bit of a different story. We have multiple discrete storms, and one of these could have enough potential to take advantage of the very limited shear we have here, where we're looking at about 20-30 knots worth of shear. Sufficient enough to maybe produce damaging wind gust or a tornado or two. But as we head into Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon, start to see this line develop, and that's when things will really start to pick up from there. So now we're going to go ahead and transition over towards this region where our severe threat's going to be a little bit higher. So here are our temps today. These were temps from probably about a couple of hours ago. NAM doesn't update as quickly as the HRRR, but we can clearly see the mid to upper 70s in some of these regions here set up throughout the course of the day. So in the overnight hours, we don't really get too chilly here. We mainly stay in the 60s and some areas getting into the 50s, mainly around Mississippi. I'm about to call them Missouri again, jeez. So we get into the afternoon hours, and here's that front coming in. You can see the contrast right here. And right along this sector here is where I'm interested, because this is where the greatest warmth is available, and this will probably be in good conjunction with that moist sector too. This is going to be an area where I'm watching for probably the most severe storms. Do I think there will be an enhanced risk? Probably not, but I can't rule it out either. And then as we head into Thursday, we'll see this warm sector start to redevelop across this region as we head into the afternoon hours. We see this pocket here where we get into the 70s, and then as we go onward, this sector dies off with the storm system, and then the cold front passes through and we'll be done with the severe threat. Y'all don't know. So the moist sector really starts to get really juicy by tomorrow afternoon. Look over here towards southern Louisiana, right around where New Orleans is, and this is what's kind of concerning. I'm always watching with this kind of setup the threat of those onshore supercells, and we'll take a look at the composite reflectivity to get an idea if we're going to be seeing some of that. I do think that'll be the case, but when we start seeing those dew points getting past 65 and up, that's usually a pretty big red flag right there. Now, one question I do have is, how quick does this front move? That's going to be a key factor in a lot of this. I do think that the forcing is going to be enough to where maybe we can get some prefrontal storms, and if so, that could be a big problem right here. If there's going to be an enhanced risk, I would say it would pop up right about here. And this is a bad little area that I'm drawing, but I'm trying. Okay, still not used to this. But anywhere around this, where I drew this circle, I would be watching for the increased threat of severe weather, maybe even a couple of tornadoes, maybe even a strong one. Can't be ruled out. Jet stream really starts to strengthen just about at this point as well, so it wouldn't be unfeasible for an enhanced risk to be issued. We'll have to see how things progress here. That being said, let's roll this forward a bit further. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And as we head into the overnight hours, we start to lose that moist sector. Starts to become really condensed to the south, but look what happens as we get into Thursday afternoon. A little bit of a resurgence begins to develop. A small area right around here. I do think that by this point we'll be dealing with mostly a linear threat. In fact, I'll go ahead and click a sounding here. And we're not even picking up on a severe threat here. It actually looks like there's a small cap that's trying to pop up right on the low levels of this sounding here. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think severe potential is going to be pretty limited. I don't see this going up to a slight risk. But there is potential there, so this does warrant some attention, of course. So now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and take a look at the composite reflectivity, and we'll also take a look at the CAPE values too. So that's what we're looking at right about now. For the most part, as we head into the overnight, it's going to be relatively quiet. One thing that could be an interesting talking point with this weather threat would be the cloud cover here. So from the NAM's perspective here, I don't see a lot of prefrontal storms, which might be some good news here. But there are a handful out here just ahead of that may bring a marginal to potentially slightly higher tornado threat. The helicities aren't very strong. There isn't a lot of directional shear with this, so that might be a good sign. But we do see a little bit of a curve in that hordeograph here, so it's not like I can just say that there's a zero tornado threat. And even then, we don't necessarily need a tornado for it to be a significant weather event. Those damaging wind gusts could be plenty of trouble in its own right, as is. So we'll roll this a little further forward here. This condenses into a much more solid line, mainly looking at a damaging wind threat. And then as we go into Thursday, this line really starts to dissolve here, but if there's going to be any sort of resurgence, it's going to be a little further to the south here, where we have a bit more abundant warm sector and moist sector as well. But even then, based off the reflectivity so far, storms aren't that impressive. Like I said, this isn't really looking like a robust severe outbreak of any sort, but given the parameters that are available, especially with the warm and the moist sector, it still has to be respected. So last thing to look at here would be the mixed layer CAPE. If you ever ask why I only use mixed layer CAPE versus surface CAPE, well, mixed layer CAPE looks at all levels of the atmosphere. It's as simple as that. So let's scroll this down. And as we go forward here, we can see some weak to moderate CAPE popping up here. And as we get later into the day, that's when we start to get into those 1,000 joules per kilogram. A couple of spots getting above 1,500 over here. But as quickly as that CAPE starts to really intensify, we start to lose that daytime heating. And with that, the CAPE goes away. And then we'll see if we get any sort of real resurgence into Thursday night, Friday morning. Not much. So not the most impressive severe setup, but it's still one to be respected. And then there's still time for this to uptick here. I remember there was an outbreak last month where we weren't expecting too much out of it. And it was a pretty significant tornado outbreak as a result, though. Well, out of nowhere at the last minute. So just definitely keep an eye on the weather. There's no need to panic here, but just stay savvy. That's all. Stay savvy, stay frosty, whichever term you want to use. Just stay on your P's and Q's, just in case. But that's it for this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely drop me a like. Always appreciate that. If you haven't already, hit the double click where you like and subscribe. Share the video to anyone that may find it useful. And if things really uptrend a bit, I'll maybe do a video in the morning. But till the next video, this has been Metalhead Weatherman. I'm signing off. You guys have a good